Hello and welcome to YakWaxLips. My name is Michael, your point-and-click adventurer, and this is my brand new series called I Finally Played. It's a series about all the games that have sat in my online library for far too long, gathering metaphorical dust, and these games are always pushed to the back of the digital cupboard. So I'm forcing myself to break that habit, show them some love, and show you the outcome. No longer will I just play Monkey Island yet again. The first entry I've picked is the 2014 mystery thriller The Samaritan Paradox from Faravid Entertainment, and it's published by Screen 7. The game starts with a very haunting melody, one which will continue throughout the game, and we are introduced to Ord Solomon, who we discover he is a cryptologist, meaning his forte is cracking codes. From the get-go, it's clear we're in Sweden, and not just because it literally tells us, but also there are so many things you can click on at the start, and the majority of them are IKEA furniture. Specifically, we're in Gothenburg and the year 1984. It's a bustling metropolis, but we often hop off to the island of Vardo, which has a small town community vibe to it. Ord is in a low point in his life. His love life has crumbled and he's feeling burnt out. And as a pick-me-up, we've been given a book by our favourite author, Jonathan Bergman. Actually, it's his last book, as the author recently died. Or has he? From page 1 of the book, we discover a secret code in the ISBN number pointing to Jonathan Bergman's daughter. And moving quickly, we meet his daughter Sarah and are told that her father's estate has been left to her, but only if she can crack a series of complex codes and puzzles. Step up, Ord Solomon. The story reminded me of the Da Vinci Code slightly, but more so the Swedish behemoth that was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. Not just because of the Swedish connection, but due to the family secrets that slowly seep to the surface. Although I enjoyed the way the main plot developed, there were a few offshoots that didn't seem to fully pay off, such as a secret weapons facility and the introduction of a hired private detective. It felt that there was certainly a grand idea, but maybe it needed a little bit more time to run and get some real meat on the bones. Ultimately though, the weaving story was intriguing. That is, until the ending. Now, I won't say it was a bad ending because I don't actually believe it is. However, again, I think it suffered with not enough time being spent on it. There's a huge reveal very near to the end, and then, well, that's kind of it. It was slightly jarring. A short way into the game and it suddenly changes completely, 180 degrees, as we end up playing out a fairy tale. At one point we come into a possession of a fantasy novel we have to garner clues from, and instead of us, Ord, just reading from it and getting the clues, we get to play out the book. Going from the dark and gloomy Sweden of the 80s to a colourful fantasy world with dragons was like night and day. In the fantasy world, we play as Freya, a young woman who has been washed up on a desert island. I'm not going to say why we have to play through this, as it is actually a pretty big plot point, but it's a really cool way of getting 1, more gameplay, and 2, discovering clues that we need to use in the real world. I liked Ord. He's quite passive and has a laissez-faire attitude, but it's to his advantage. It just seems more real that people would trust him rather than someone who's a little abrasive. Sarah is okay, she's just lost her dad and often seems a little preoccupied, but when we deal with her, she tells it straight. Taking the rest of the cast of characters though, and they're all a little one-dimensional, almost as if they've been put there purely for the sake of a puzzle. There's no head honcho of an evil corporation, but the few bad apples are again, they're a little toothless. None of them had any presence or stamped much upon the story. The voice acting, for the most part, is good. Although it's based in Sweden, everyone has American accents. There was one guy in the fantasy world though who was just plain terrible. So far so goodish. Turning to the puzzles is where I think the Samaritan Paradox shows its strength. Ord, being a code breaker, you think that there were codes on every screen. However, there's only a small handful of these. There are a few riddles, and these were great fun for me, even though a little knowledge is needed for them beforehand. I racked my brains for ages on one particular riddle involving a cane and sunset, but once it made sense to me, it clicked and totally makes sense. There were 1 or 2 moments when I did reach for a walkthrough, but this came down mainly to the fact I'd missed something myself to pick up or maybe flick a switch. Once or twice I ended up trying to use my inventory on everything just to see what worked, which is never a good sign. And then there's the crane puzzle. The puzzle is okay, but man, it took forever. There are several time puzzles throughout the game as well, and if you fail these, the screen fades to black and starts you just before the beginning of the scene again. Sometimes it takes you back a little too far for my liking, and I ended up playing through some of these parts a little too much. I do feel it's one of the more difficult point and click games in recent years, and when a puzzle comes to fruition, I definitely had a sense of achievement. The pixel art is one of the reasons I decided to play this first. I'm a sucker for it, and it's done mostly really well here. There's a little bit of pixel hunting in some scenes, with objects merging into the background, but overall it's nicely executed. The way the island reflects on the water is a particular highlight for me. The music reminded me a little of Chris Carter from the X-Files, or maybe early Law & Order. There's no real strong melodies, but rather an overall cloud of sounds, with a few exceptions, such as some dance music in a bar. The main drawback of the game for me though, is the way you interact with both characters and items. When talking to a character, your notebook is pulled up for you to click on a certain topic. Throughout the game, the notes keep changing, but you're never notified of this. So at times I was thinking, I've already asked her about that thing, but really now I'd done X and Y, I had to ask her again the exact same thing, as my notebook entry had changed. It could have been a lot clearer and cleaner, maybe implementing an icon or a noise to show it had changed. As for the items, it's simply left click to use and right click to look at, but sometimes the right click seemed to combine items together. It was a little frustrating. My overall opinion on the Samaritan Paradox though is that you should play it. The story flows well, the puzzles are of the higher calibre, and some of the art is gorgeous. It's not one for younger audiences due to the issues it deals with, and there are a few swear words scattered about. While researching the game after my playthrough, I discovered that the developer, Peter Lundqvist, joined forces with fellow Swede Joel Staff Hasto, the brains behind Cathy Rain, and the outcome was the awards-heavy Whispers of a Machine, heralded as a modern classic. Why then did it take me so long to play the game, you ask? I received the Samaritan Paradox in a bundle over on fanatical.com a while ago, and it was the last game to be put into my basket, and I only put it in there to make up the numbers. Funnily enough, it's the first of those games that I bought that I've played now. You can pick it up for around £5 today, I'll leave a link below. So there you are, I've finally played the Samaritan Paradox. Over on Twitter, I'll have a poll of which game to play next from my Steam library, so you can go there and cast your vote. Also, leave your suggestions in the comments below. There can be games from the 1990s through to today. Chances are I'll have them in my Steam library somewhere. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe, the little notification bell, and the like button too. It all really helps. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Take care.